Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the PSP game Grand Knight's History. The game was released in 2011 and is developed by Vanillaware and published by Marvelous. The game however was never released outside of Japan and as such never had an English translation. This version however is a fan English made patch version where practically everything has been redone into English. So was this Vanillaware game, which was never released outside of Japan, any good or not? Well, let's take a more detailed look at the game and see. The game's story starts off with you choosing one of several kingdoms, which you will pledge your loyalty to. Once you do this, you begin your story and start off by meeting someone who is essentially your personal assistant, that will help you guide you in the world that you're in, and the various features and settings. The game then has you enroll in becoming a knight, and you then team up with various other members of the guild. Once you have formed your party, you then go out on quests on behalf of the nation and aid in assisting the citizens and other knights in the kingdom. While out on adventures, you learn about the state of the world that you're in, and how some of the nations are at war with each other, while other nations remain neutral. While out on various quests, the game's story then becomes a little bit more deeper, as you learn about plots from various sides wanting to invade your own nation, or take it down from within its own capital. The game's story is generally rather good, however it did feel like it takes a very long time to actually get anywhere because of how the game's gameplay actually works. You see, you can't just jump straight into the game's story and focus on that. You simply just won't be leveled up enough to do so, and in the end the game basically forces you to do all these side quests in order to get leveled up enough to advance in the actual story. Speaking of gameplay, what's it actually like? Well, it's really rather quite good. Combat is unlike that which I've ever seen in a game before, and its style is something completely brand new to me, and something that really drew me in right from the start. Combat consists of you and 3 other team members in a turn-based style system, on a world that rotates on each number of characters' turns. It's probably best you just watch the gameplay footage here on the screen to understand what I'm trying to get across. The combat system is laid out what you would expect it to be, and you also have to learn various abilities in order to do skills or magic, depending on what class your characters are. There are also the game modes themselves. You have the game's main story, and also you have something called War Mode. War Mode was meant to be an online thing, and I think that originally this was going to be a game where Sony were going to be pushing the online feature, as it had you train knights in the solo mode and then enlist them into war mode. Once in war mode, you will connect online and face other players via the internet to do battle against each other's warring nation. However, since the game never reached outside of Japan, this just didn't really happen. Well, not outside of Japan anyway, and from what I've been able to find out online, the servers themselves didn't seem to last that long either. Long story short, I think that Sony wanted to make this game a massive deal for the PlayStation Portable, but in the end it just ended up being a failed project, as they just didn't put the time or effort into porting it outside of Japan, and instead put their time and resources into other things. It's a real shame because the gameplay is extremely good, and if anything, my only complaint is that it's extremely hard and also very, very grindy. And I do mean very, very grindy. I've already lost about 20 hours into the game, and I've done something stupid like 80 something side quests, and when it comes to the main story, I've only done about 3 quests and fought 2 bosses, because the game's just that hard and grindy. The gameplay itself is good, it's got a very steep learning curve, and if you don't have the patience for this type of game, then I would probably advise against it. It's good, but it takes time and it takes practice and a hell of a lot of patience. When it comes to the game's characters, you're given a small team to choose from, ranging from knights, archers and mages. You can select a few types given to you once you pick a character, and you can adjust them slightly by changing the colour of their clothing, or their hair, or by giving them a few accessories by choosing them from the main menu. You can later on change this as the game's story progresses, as you will gain various new bits of armour and clothing, which you can add to your character in order to change their appearance. However, what you are given seems to take a long time to gain, and even what you're given still seems to be rather limited, shall we say. Honestly, I feel like this was done on purpose, as I can't help but shake this feeling that there was a planned clothing and armour DLC meant to have been released later down the line, but which just never happened. One odd thing that I did notice, however, about the characters was that as the game's story progressed, was that I noticed that some enemies looked rather familiar. Then I realised that they did indeed look familiar because they seemed almost identical or based off enemies from Odin's Sphere. Mostly it was the undead characters, as they looked very similar to the undead characters from the underworld in the game Odin's Sphere. The game's graphics are honestly the most beautiful I think the PlayStation Portable has ever produced. It's pretty much that simple. You see, I've played a lot of PlayStation Portable games, and I've always felt that the games on it were either pushing the system too hard for what they were trying to achieve, or that they just didn't really push the console to what it could really do at all. This includes games such as Metal Gear Solid, Persona 3 Portable, and a whole host of others. This game, however, feels like it knows exactly what the PSP can do, and pushes the console to its limits, but also seems to understand its limits itself, and doesn't push it to the point where you're forced to stare at a loading screen for a good 30 to 60 seconds each time you change to a different location or area. The graphics and appearance of the game are nothing short of stunning. Right from the very beginning of the game, you see the beautiful artwork which we have come to know from Vanillaware, and it's just utterly a joy to watch, as all the animations and artwork are just so beautifully well done. All the graphics and animations run quite smoothly, I never came across any problems, and everything just flowed together really well. It is quite impressive that something like this was done on the PSP, as really I wouldn't expect it on this type of console. I would expect to see something more like this on the Vita rather than the PSP. The world in which you explore has you travelling from nation to nation as you learn more about the wars and the states of each kingdom. As you travel, you will go to new locations ranging from forests, coastal town, a huge crater, open plains, and other nations, and a whole host of other places. Now, this is the part where I was expecting to see the same locations used time and time again, but claiming that they're new areas, much like what Valkyria Chronicles 3 does. However, this didn't happen. Well, not on the same scale anyway. Let's say, for example, I'm in the forest area where Queen Muse's kingdom is. I was expecting to see the same forest environment used time and time again. Yet the game didn't do that to the level I was expecting it to do. Instead, it has something like 7 to 10 different looking forest locations for that area, and then changes them depending on what area of the map you're on. It also changes to different layouts too, depending on where you are as well. So for example, if I'm in a more open area in the forest and near a lake, then when I enter battle, I don't just get a tree-filled area, but instead I get a more open plain looking environment with a river in the background and a couple of trees on one side. It is a very small but clever detail, which I was actually rather surprised to see the game use. It could have just taken the shortcut like what Sega did with Valkyria Chronicles 3, but thankfully that hasn't happened with this game. You do see the same locations time and time again reused, don't get me wrong. However, this is mostly down to the game being extremely grindy, if anything else. So here comes the important question. Should I buy Grand Knight's History? And I honestly doubt many people have even heard of Grand Knight's History at all. And sadly, it's the same for another game on the Sega Saturn called Princess Crown, which was also ported to the PSP as well, but again, never released outside of Japan. And finding the English translation patch for that, compared to this game, is even harder. This is a brilliant game, and one I honestly cannot recommend enough. Yes, it's nowhere near perfect, and yes, it has loads of various bits I don't like about it, such as the constant grinding, or the fact that you can't just jump straight into the story, or how the game won't let you train your team after a set amount of time, which just seems absolutely utterly stupid and an awful way to basically force you to essentially enroll your characters into war mode. Because if you've spent hours upon hours leveling up your character, what is the point of then sending them into war mode, getting new characters and starting from level 1 again? It just seems quite stupid. The game has beautiful music, it's got fantastic animations and artwork, the characters and adventure just keep bringing me back to it. It isn't anywhere near perfect, and honestly, the game's designed to be a very long grind experience. So if you're looking at getting this game, don't think that you can complete it in a weekend or something along those lines. This is a game which requires a lot of time and a lot of patience to be put into it. Here's the difficult part, however. If you are wanting to buy this game, you can't. Well, unless of course you go out and buy the Japanese version, and then if you do that, you have to make a dump file of the game itself, which is not as hard as it seems, but you then have to put it on your PC. Then once that's done, you have to track the English patch down, and then spend more time actually installing that patch onto the game itself. So, as you can gather, this takes quite a long time just to play a game, which realistically I think is what's going to turn a lot of people off. And really, it shouldn't. The game is worth it, and it is worth the time, and it is worth the effort in order to play it. Sadly, this is what I think has caused a game to fall into obscurity, and it's just heartbreaking because I really do love Vanillaware. I know when I see Vanillaware's logo on a game, it's going to be good. And this game is good. It's a fantastic game, created by them, which hardly anyone knows about. The guys who did the English patch for this game also deserve a medal, as the game's been translated brilliantly. I honestly don't understand why Vanillaware don't contact the guys who did the English translation, pay them for their work, and then re-release the game via the PlayStation Store or anywhere else that'll have it, and then give the guys credit in-game and re-release a true hidden gem for everyone to finally enjoy. I know it seems like a lot of work to get this game in English and getting it to work, but trust me on this, it really is worth it. Yes, it takes a while, yes, it's grindy, yes, it's complicated at times and far more difficult than it needs to be in order just to play a game, but once you're in there, you realise that it is worth the time and effort in order to play it. Well, that's it for this video guys, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.